Welcome back to Hypnagogue. Happy to have you here. It's been a minute. Still figuring out my cadence here with releasing. While the system of putting Hypnagogue out is still so much in its infancy, my intention has been to put very little pressure on myself, particularly when it comes to pacing. But it is on my mind, and I'm thinking about long-term how I can create a consistent pace. But for now, we're still kind of in the lab with that. But here we are today, and I'm very excited to be here with you and share with you the latest chapter. Here's your reminder that Hypnagogue is also available to read on Substack. Info on that is in the show notes. Right now, by listening to this very podcast episode, you are part of a very special moment for Hypnagogue, which is its earliest days. It would mean a lot to me if you could nurture this show by following it, leaving a rating, or sharing the episode with someone you love. Even more important to me is that you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. After all, I made it just for you. Without further ado, here's Chapter 4, Lord of Nothing. An excerpt from On Negotiation, Part 4, Negotiating with a Machine, written by the Chief Executor of the Varick Salvage Company, Ira Vera, 39th of the Face. In the end, a suspicion that haunts me, this draw of the company towards absolute perfection. Can there be such a thing as a perfect negotiation? It seems to me that the discipline of human relationship and exchange would completely alchemize, perhaps cross irreversibly over into the realm of mathematics and physical law. Quantified leverage, calculated intentions of speed and direction augmented by mass, financial mass, operational mass, cultural mass, levers and gears and weights. An inevitable succession of exchanged words. A stack of papers to be signed. A pile of dust and numbers. Finally, just as the thing approaches its very own perfection, would it not disappear? And what else might adhere to this kind of law that, within arrival, vanishes? Did I manifest that insurance salesman? My grief turned to panic. If that man had really, truly been of a completely natural sequence of events, he would have had to travel incredibly far, enabled by nothing but his own capabilities and will, or his employer's, I suppose. As I kept walking away from the salesman, I racked my brain, meticulously recalling every topographical jeopardy that stood between Elufeus's lighthouse and the Varick headquarters city. There were at least a dozen obstacles classified by most freight companies as impassable. Even I would consider 2 or 3 of them to be so, at least by any unaltered human. The obstacles were countless. On the other side of the obsidian sea, there was nothing but savage forests, and beyond that, the Gaussian festering desert, crowned on the far side by a massive range of plasmic mountains. The only way past those are the underground wind tunnels owned by Dorn, an infamously difficult corporation of histrionic children. Then the Pefkopf, an expanse of foot and head hills that make most human minds turn to dust, and beyond that, the most impassable of all, the Kilrima Rift. It wasn't just the obstacles themselves, but the sheer distance. The expanse between here and the Varric headquarters city was entirely implausible. Traveling it wasn't a matter of days or fortnights or even years. It was a matter of decades. Why would the Varric Salvage Company set their sights this far away from the Feldlands and waste a good salesman by sending him out here? The answer was infuriatingly obvious. They thought there'd be business. The more I obsessed, the worse it got. Companies of that size and nature don't just throw away employees for the off chance of an opportunity to expand the business. I'd witnessed too many companies, too intimately, to expect anything but a demand for absolute certainty. Listener, there is no force more responsible for the corrosion of this world than that singular, uncompromising, insatiable desire for perfect control, perfect predictability. No, the Varric Salvage Company didn't just think there was business here. They knew it. My panic sparked like a hot coal, and I fell to my knees on the earth, desperately pressing my palms against its surface to feel. What I was feeling for, I had no clue. But I needed to know if the land's gravity had shifted, if it was shifting still, and if I had been the one to shift it. I was like that for a long, pointless moment, groveling on my knees, hands grasping at the earth, before I thought of my weight. My weight! My weight! I squeezed my eyes shut and I tried to feel the weight of my body. Was there anything different? Anything changed? Was I lighter or heavier than I had been the day before, a year before, 5 years before? Of course I couldn't figure that out. An idiot I was. If there had been any shift in the gravitational conditions here, it could have happened at any point in time. And I certainly hadn't been paying attention. If I had changed this one thing, what else had I changed? I thought of Elufeus. More panic. I threw my body off like a necktie and dove back into the earth, bit through the crust like an apple skin, and then almost instantly was plunging through the upper mantle, a rock putty of magnesium and iron. This substance was hot, dense, and pliant, like weight-thickened dough, ancient, plastic, clay without any memory of shape. I could feel it breathing, as slow as centuries. It shifted around me like a slumbering beast turning over. I risked waking it, risked complete seismic cataclysm, just to rummage around for some evidence of irregularity. I can't emphasize my stupidity enough. If I knew anything of tectonics, it was all secondhand. Certainly not enough to be digging around in the Earth's scaffolding like it was a bag of loose coins. Miraculously, reality held firm around me, as if it knew my distress. There was no light here, only density and heat and plastic movement. I excavated further, material blurring into molten liquid. Tremors sounded, buried so deep the earth's surface would never even hear their colossal, violent roaring. I dove deeper, and the world started spinning around me, a rush of insanity and fire. As my mind scrambled around looking for irregularities, something began to happen. I began to have a thought. Buried in this vortex of maniacal plasma and force, what could ever be considered irregular? What here ever pretended to be normal? The inferno laughs at that kind of sentimentality. Then there it was, like a God-locked heart at the center of the world. It spun on its own rate, loose from the earth's own turning, like an eye rolling around in its socket. The core of the earth, as solid as fact. I surged upwards, tearing through the layers of earth, and came back to my body. I was on my knees again, heaving air in and out of my lungs, forehead pressed desperately into the dirt. Nothing. There was no proof of what I might have done or not done. What had I expected to find? His name written on the core of the earth? Before I'd even caught my breath, I was rifling through his son's memories, Malian, Celadin. It was with Averick that I found a place to grasp onto. It was dangerously simple. I closed my eyes, snapped my fingers, and when I opened them, I was in a parking lot. Grasping never feels quite right to me, like shrugging into an ill-fitted coat and the armpits pinch and the shoulder pads won't sit comfortably. I stood there in the parking lot with my eyes still closed, trying to get things to lay right. The concrete under my feet was abusingly hard, and the engines whined around distant corners, sharp, synthetic. Even the sound of horse hooves nearby was tinny and punishing. I opened my eyes. The sky was too bright. A carriage door peeled open, and I turned my head to see an electric brougham parked beside me. There was a brown-haired, middle-aged woman hunched over a metal clanking contraption, an aluminum walker she was trying to unfold. Inside the now open-doored carriage was an old woman, sitting in her car seat like a dry leaf curled up on herself. She looked out into the world with dim, lantern-lit eyes, searching, like a lighthouse searches the darkness. Her lips wavered silently around words she'd long forgotten. When our eyes met, the strange thing happened. She recognized me. Or really, she had the experience of recognizing me. And her face caught light. A brilliant smile, like the sun released from the clouds for one precious moment. Meanwhile, having prevailed over the walker, the other woman stood up and looked at the old woman. Seeing the radiance on her kin mother's face, she felt an instant, exhilarating rush of happiness. She couldn't recall the last time she'd seen Daisy smile like that. She turned around to see what had brought on such a smile, but I was already gone. Panic had soured into dread in my stomach. Quiet, unbearable. And that flash of brilliancy I'd had to prove that Elufeus's footprint remained on this world, that in my idiocy I had not wiped any trace of his existence off the face of this earth, was gone, and the coals had gone cold. I could find Elufeus's son, the real one. I could just as easily dig up a mirage. I plunged through the front doors. As if to mock me, he was standing right there. Avrik stood like a specter beside a front door kiosk the hospital manned with a rotation of pre-med students. There was a lanyard around his neck and a few hospital brochures in hand. He looked pale, famished. Not a moment had passed on his face since his father's death. He still did not remember me. "Welcome," he said emptily. "Do you have an appointment today?" I had frozen in place the second I laid eyes on him. My eyes kept darting off his face just to come back to it, just to confirm he was there. "Can I help you with anything?" he asked once the silence was noticeable. The floor was linoleum, washed that morning and every morning with the same antiseptic mixture. It smelled like chemicals and apple. I looked at him standing there, and all I could think about was the JIPC. The JIPC, the James Inver Price Conglomerate. The largest, most rampant bio-auditing firm I've ever come across. Their headquarters are in the Gray Flats, but they'll put an office in just about any town with more than 300 people. The same dark blue storefront, sometimes a prestigious-looking projector screen, sometimes a piece of printed cardboard propped up in the window. You go in there. You sit down in the waiting lobby till they buzz you into the waiting room, and then a receptionist sets you up for an appointment with one of their auditors. You sit down with one of them, and you start giving them information, as much of it as you can, about you, about your job, about your health, about your dreams, about your kin. The more documents you can show them, the better. They'll take whatever you have to give. They take it, get you out the door, and then come back in 5 to 10 business days with a certificate of pronouncement. This certificate declares that you and your person are one of two things: real or not real. You have about a 50-50 shot, it seems. The ones who aren't real curse the day they asked the question and get to work covering up the answer. But for those who are, life gets a little easier. Easier to get a good job and to keep it. Easier to join a kin group. Easier to book a doctor's appointment. Easier to negotiate really any sort of contract. Once you're verifiably real, people are just more willing to trust you. Until too much time has passed. You have to go get another certificate. The JIPC is bullshit. There's not one godforsaken way to prove a person, or any material object for that matter, is real or not real. You can put this together whether you're one of the many scientists who've disproved these claims over and over again, or a 6-year-old child. In fact, children seem to get this more than adults do. Probably because they're not desperate for anything. Listener, the world is ruined by adults desperate to believe a desperate idea. I hate them, the JIPC. I hate them for every pin-headed thing that they stand for. They take people's money and give them a lie. Perhaps I am lord of this universe. But seeing Avric's face proved nothing about Elufeus. It proved nothing at all. There is no evidence in this world that Elufeus is real, that he ever was real. Apparitions within apparitions. It was flooding back to me. When I first met Elufeus, I was astonished by the strength of his beliefs. At first, it was jarring to live side by side with a man so sure of his world. But over time, I found in it a great comfort. I wanted to believe what Elufeus believed. I was desperate, I guess. I allowed myself the motions, said the words alongside him, danced the dance, and it pulled me in, helped me forget. It had been years since I'd allowed myself this forgetting. But here, standing before the ever threat of mirage, I had finally returned. I finally remembered. Nothing is real. At least, nothing is real or not real. At least, not in a way one can prove. I took a step towards Avric, whatever he was, maybe a ghost, or maybe Elufeus's biological son. I took a brochure out of his hand and drifted down the hall. I would wait for a doctor.